got a late campaign. We're working on it. But this is definitely the whole pre-order system versus, hey, we're starting a project. We need your help to start it, to actually make it happen. Those are sort of two different things. And I'm trying to actually transition to make crowdfunding more of a pre-order system, like a company might, where you have the whole thing finished and then you launch it and it looks great. It's sort of like at face value, but really it's a pre-order system because it minimizes the wait time. But at the same time,
the best way to do it, if you can manage it, because it takes all the upfront costs, the overhead, and the time to get it done.
Yep.
Which is obviously very, very difficult to manage realistically.
Yeah.
But if you're going to run the Kickstarter, then all you need to do is get that money in. You're going to print, and then you deliver.
Yeah. Yep.
And in hindsight, that's what we would have done.
Well, and that was the thing too. Is it's like I'm comforted by knowing that like people like Yacht Club who did Shovel Knight, the Shovel Knight video game, that their story is where they were like, okay, cool. This is how much we think mathematically we're going to need to do this thing, and then they were like, oh crap. And then when reality hit, suddenly reality hits and they're like, this isn't like, we thought we had a ton of money.
Yeah.
This isn't like nearly enough to finish this thing. And so they basically were like, okay guys, if we're all on board, we all have to commit to not being paid for living off our individual savings and borrowing from family and friends to survive for the next 6 or 7 months.
Right.
And that's what they did, because all these, there's always like way more expenses than you're expecting.
And I've heard of people losing their homes.
And the fan, the person who's backing,
they just want their game.
They just want their game, and so they may not, and rightly so, but they don't necessarily know what's going on behind the scenes. Because from their perspective, they're like, yeah, cool, it's there, therefore I will logically get it soon.
Right.
But the reality of it is, so I was comforted by knowing that there's people who are much more professional than, at least beyond my experience, who also have struggled with similar things. And so now when I there's other games that and books and stuff that I funded or movies that are like being big high profile, and then they're like, you know what, this is going to be delayed another year. And there's some people that grumble and like, oh, you guys suck, you're not keeping your promises. And I'm more of now, because I've had some of these experiences, I'm more of the mindset of like, hey, you know what? You're trying to make it the best quality you can. I am totally okay with waiting. You're trying to give it the love. I'd rather you finish it and make it really good than release something at the exact time you said that's really crappy and clearly not finished and very unfulfilling. But that's another thing too. And it's another Kickstarter I was thinking of that was very successful was the Bloodstained video game. You can tell I did. But the Bloodstained video game was one where, in hindsight, I'm like, oh man, that would have been so cool if we could have done that. But basically, they said, we have already made an agreement with a video game company that we have enough money to make this game, but we're not completely relying upon Kickstarter pledges to fund this thing. They're like, we have enough money to do it. We already have a partnership. The game is going to be made, but we want to do this Kickstarter to prove that there's a big enough fan, desire for this to happen. And then that extra money is great because we'll also use that to even improve the game.
Right.
So in hindsight now, it's like, and I feel like I'm not rich, but I'm in a better financial position than I was back then. And now it's easier for me to be like, okay, if I was going to do a second Kickstarter, then I would do that. I would, this thing is ready to go. This extra money will just help for printing costs, but it is done.
Yeah.
And that way they're not waiting on all that. And there isn't this oh my gosh, we still have to create, So, but that was something I didn't even cross my mind 10 years ago,
Well, and the conundrum is that the people that need crowdfunding more for the traditional purpose of crowdfunding don't have money. Like that, so it's kind of, that's a bit of the conundrum. It's like, if you have the money, you can produce it, but crowdfunding is still super useful. Even to, we've seen Boom Studios run a very big crowdfunding campaign recently. So